Every evening, Swamiji used to walk in the mud grounds. That day, Nagmahashaya also walked behind him. Learning that Nagmahashaya was not going to pass the night in the monastery, Swamiji asked a disciple to watch for a ferry boat as it was already getting dark. Before taking leave, Nagmahashaya prostrated before Swamiji with the words, "Hail Shiva Shankara! Hail Shiva Shankara!" Swamiji raised him by the hand and said, "Please do come and bless us with your holy presence every now and then." Whenever he was reminded of Swamiji, he used to greet him with the words, "Glory to Lord Shiva." And when the topic of his preaching religion and conquest of the Western world through spirituality arose, Nagmahashaya would get excited and speak of Swamiji as indeed the greatest of heroes. The house of the late Balaram Basu of Bagbazar was a favorite resort of Sri Ramakrishna. Nagmahashaya used to call it the courtyard of Shrivas. The sannyasin disciples of Sri Ramakrishna used to stay there whenever they went to Calcutta. Nagmahashaya often met them there. One day, Chakravarti accompanied him. Swamis Brahmananda and Premananda were present there on that day. They were talking on various subjects. As soon as Nagmahashaya arrived there, they stopped all their talks and began to talk about Sri Ramakrishna. When they were about to return home, Swami Brahmananda said, "The moment Nagmahashaya entered here, we were unconsciously reminded of the Master, and all other topics were dropped. It is due to the appearance of such great souls that spirituality is still present in India. Blessed indeed Nagmahashaya." Nagmahashaya had the highest reverence for his sannyasi Guru Bhais. He used to say of them, "They are not men, but gods in human forms, who came to play with the Lord. Who can know them? Who can understand them?" Gradually, the last days of Deen Dayal drew near. During the closing days of his life, he occupied himself with worship and meditation. He had no longer any worldly attachment, and though far advanced in years, he had no physical ailment. One morning, Nagmahashaya was leading him by the hand when all on a sudden he fell down on the ground, utterly exhausted. Nagmahashaya bore his father in his arms. On the way, the old man fainted. After reaching home, he recovered, but Nagmahashaya knew for certain that his father's last hour has come. He sent for a doctor at once and began to repeat in the ear of his father the holy name of the Lord. The tongue of the dying man also joined with his. The doctor came. The disease was apoplexy of a serious type. The doctor felt his pulse. There was no hope. Shortly after, at the ripe age of 80, Deen Dayal passed away, while the name of the Lord was still on his lips. Nagmahashaya consoled himself with the thought that his father passed away at a very old age with full consciousness and with the name of the Lord on his lips. Nagmahashaya put on customary mourning dress. He fasted, took Havishya and offered 10 pindas according to the Shastric rites. Then came the Shraddha ceremony. This was the last duty he could perform towards his father on his side of the world. He had a mind to do it in a grand style. But where was the money to be had? Some of his devotees, who were officers in the farm of Mrs. Raleig's Bros, raised subscriptions among themselves to help him in celebrating the ceremony without informing him anything of it. When Nagmahashaya came to know of it, he humbly begged of them not to do so. Mortgaging his own house, he borrowed rupees 500 from the merchant of his village. He also borrowed some money from an old lady, his neighbor. This ceremony cost him nearly rupees 1200. Then Nagmahashaya went to Gaya and there offered pindars for 3 days with shaven head according to the customary rites and returned to Calcutta. He told Suresh that in the last days of his life his father has renounced all desires and refraining from thinking of worldly matters, passed all his time in thinking the name of God and finally left his body with a full consciousness of him. When Mrs. Pals came to know that Nagmahashaya ran into debt in order to perform the Shraddha ceremony, they proposed to let the house at Kumartuli to a new tenant and increased the rent. Ranjit too agreed to this proposal, but Nagmahashaya would never concede to it. The old tenant, Kritivas, was much impressed with this generosity of Nagmahashaya, and he of his own accord offered to pay the increased rate. But Nagmahashaya protested and said, "You have to labor hard day and night to earn your livelihood and then with great difficulty manage to pay the rent. I can by no means exact a higher rent from you." Nagmahashaya loved Kritivas as his own son, and during his stay in Calcutta, Kritivas also served him with great love and reverence. Kritivas lived in that house, and he preserved with great care the room where Nagmahashaya used to live and his broken bedstead. When Nagmahashaya returned to Calcutta from Gaya, the Holy Mother was living at Bagbazar. Nagmahashaya was one day going to her with sweets and a piece of cloth, when suddenly he had an attack of colic on the way and could not proceed any further. He had to remain almost senseless for a long time on the veranda of a house in the street. He could easily have returned home in a hackney coach and had enough money to pay for it. But how could he do so without offering the things he had brought for the mother? He was lamenting that he could not go there, as he was forced to lie down. Nearly after 2 hours, he felt relieved and returned home after having an interview with the Holy Mother. In that year, Calcutta had visitation of a plague epidemic for the first time. The rich and the poor were flying away from the metropolis. The great city was almost deserted. Mrs. Pals left their Calcutta house in charge of Nagmahashaya and went away to their village. A Brahmin cook, a Brahmin clerk, and a servant lived with him. One day Chakravarti went in search of him to the Pal's house and saw him reading the Gita with spectacles on. Seeing him there, Nagmahashaya said, "What can I understand of the Gita, fool as I am? You are a Brahmin and learned too. Please read it before me and explain." The shloka of the Gita beginning with Karmarnya karma ya pashyet etc. was explained to him in different ways as interpreted by the difficult commentators. Of all the commentaries, he liked that of Sridhara Swami best. 3 days after this, the Brahmin clerk was attacked with plague. A doctor was called in to treat him. But who would nurse him? Nobody dared to approach him. Nagmahashaya alone had to nurse the poor man. The case proved fatal, and the dying man pressed Nagmahashaya to take him to Ganga. As none came to help him, Nagmahashaya alone had to carry the man to the nearest cart. In a short time, he passed away on the lap of Nagmahashaya, uttering Ganga, Ganga. Nagmahashaya had to face great difficulties for his cremation. As he died of plague, no Brahmin came to help him. At last, when he offered to pay a large sum, some Brahmins came forward and they cremated him. Some gentlemen happened to come there in search of Nagmahashaya. They expressed wonder at the conduct of Nagmahashaya, and one of them remarked, "He must be stark mad." One day, Nagmahashaya went to the temple of Kalighat. On his way back, he met a devotee in the Maidan. The gentleman took him to the Eden Gardens to show him over the place. Entering the gardens, Nagmahashaya, simple and mirthful as a child, inquired about him everything that met his eyes. When he was returning, he told him, "Man is running madly after enjoyments. When he has assumed this human form, instead of trying to solve the great mysteries of life and death, he has lost himself in a few transitory objects of the world. He forgets that he will have to leave this very soon. This world is full of rajasic and tamasic elements and is dominated by pursuit of money and sensuality, and people are running mad after them. O Lord, what a wondrous play is thine!